Hello and welcome to GPTV on Tuesday the 29th of May. My name is Philip Kingston.
I'm Gary Peer.
And sitting beside me at the Jupiter's Casino in the sunny Gold Coast is a good friend of ours, a fellow by the name of Chris Handlet from Byron Bay First National. Hey Chris, how are you?
Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning, Chris. Good to have you here.
Thank you.
Great to have Chris with us on GPTV. Chris is a buddy of ours from Byron Bay. He's left the bong in Byron Bay to join us at the Gold Coast Arec Convention, which is the Australian Real Estate Industry Convention, where 2,500 real estate agents from all over Australia have converged on the Gold Coast to try and learn something. Having said that, there were 2,500 real estate agents in the auditorium. The air conditioning was trying to get rid of all of that hot air. How did you go yesterday, Chris?
I had a good day yesterday, but I just left the first session this morning. And I think, Phil, there was 1,500 agents not there at the first session this morning.
Yes, well, we're not notorious early risers in our industry, even though
a lot of slow over there this morning.
A lot of the gurus preach it.
Well, it was a big night for us too, Gary, because I'm very proud to say, now that we're in our late 40s, heading towards the big one, we can still get thrown out of a restaurant. 11:30 last night, the entire Gary Peer and Associates team was ejected from Moo Moo's, and we will revisit that story at another time, but I'm proud to say we've still got it in us.
Yeah, and it was due to your actions, by the way, Phil. But so we get some sense in this interview and GPTV edition. Firstly, we'd like to say welcome, Chris, but also for our viewers, Chris is a principal of the leading company in Byron Bay, being First National Real Estate, but Chris is also a mentor, a coach and a speaker. He's quite an authority on real estate. He's actually, we've had the pleasure of having a number of sessions with you, Chris, educating and helping us to be greater. It might be a great question now to just ask you how you're finding the real estate scene across Australia. I know it's a very general question, but what are you finding things are like out there, generally speaking?
The cities are strong. I think Melbourne agents are telling me, whilst their volumes are down, you guys would know this better than anybody, that the market's still moving pretty well. Sydney's very robust, so Sydney seems quite good, surprisingly good, and probably the best of the capital cities, though Perth is also having a resurgence now, which I guess makes sense with the mining boom, finally really kicking in for the second time over there. Regional areas are still doing it hard and they're very spotty, so if you're in a regional area that has very good farming right now, or it's related to mining, they're doing well. But the worst affected areas in the country, and I'm in one of those, are the discretionary markets along the coast. I think the overwhelming majority of coastal real estate markets, whether you're in Victoria or Western Australia or whether you're in Queensland and northern New South Wales, where I'm from, those have been hit very, very badly in the last, this is our 5th hard year this year. So I guess in a general sense, people have decided that holiday homes and holiday apartments haven't been top of their list. They've sold down a lot of those assets. Probably the best way to describe the coastal markets right now is opportunities. Because a lot of the prices you can buy in the coastal areas are below replacement.
Can I just butt in here, Chris, because a lot of our viewers regularly take trips to Byron Bay.
And the Gold Coast.
And the Gold Coast, but let's specifically talk about Byron Bay. What sort of pricing has changed in Byron Bay? Have you seen the market come back in terms of percentage terms? What have you seen?
Yeah, I've seen some very big drops in some areas. And I think, strangely, as we're here now, I think we're probably right at the bottom of the market. We've seen probably price drops of around 30%. Particularly in some of the higher end properties. Though there's still sales being made, it's patchy. Sometimes you'll see a sale that will have a 206, 207 price about it, and then you'll see a couple of sales that are sales back to 02, 03 prices. But 30% at the higher end. The lower end's pretty solid. There hasn't been a great deal of change, but probably the area that's been most affected and represents the best value Australia-wide on the coastal area are holiday apartments. A lot of people abandoned their interest in those, and they've fallen quite markedly. And 30% is probably a conservative estimate there too of holiday apartments.
So now's a great time to be ringing Chris Handlet at Byron Bay First National to pick up a discounted holiday apartment. Let's talk a little bit about you though, Chris. You're a rather interesting guy, I reckon, because you're not the typical real estate agent. You're actually what I would describe as the cerebral man's real estate agent. Because
what does that mean?
I know where am I going on this? Because I believe that the Writers' Festival in Byron Bay was, you were one of the pioneers pioneers and the original startups of the Writers' Festival. Is that correct?
Yeah, yes, it was. I actually started it, and this year's its 16th year. Thank you for the plug. It's on in the first week of August. A lot of the people from your marketplace actually buy tickets and visit it each year. It's on the 3rd and the 4th and the 5th of August. It's the biggest regional writers and cultural festival in Australia now. There's about 10,000 people come along and visit it. So yeah, I've got a belief that real estate and all businesses have a choice. You can you can be on the edge of your community, or you can get right into the middle of it and get involved in community affairs and community events. My business does a lot of community work, but one of the things we've done, and I've done for the last 15 or 16 years, is run the organisation that runs not only the Writers' Festival, but a Writers' Centre in our area. We've got about 800 members, and so yeah, they're things that we as an organisation and I individually have been involved with for many years.
Look, I've got to interrupt at this point and that's all terribly fascinating, Chris, but what our viewers are really tuning in for is we really want to get to the bottom of the drugs and sex scene in Byron Bay.
I've been trying to do that for a long time.
So listen, when was the Writers' Festival? We'll give it one more plug.
It's in August, 3rd, 4th and 5th of August. Yeah. Now do you want to talk about sex and drugs?
No, we just actually sponsored a writer, an evening, a charity evening, and a writer, Elliot Perlman. You know of him? Yeah.
Not only do I know Elliot, Elliot's coming to our festival.
Is that right? We just sponsored an evening, and he talked about his book, The Street Sweeper.
Yeah.
He talked about his other book, $3, which I thought was about a real estate agent's income in 2011, but it wasn't.
I think that was a great book about the 80s, $3. Yes. Elliot's a great writer, and he will be at our festival.
I was at school with him.
All right, guys, I'm going to cut in a little bit about last weekend, Gary. Again, we had 100% success rate last week. We only had 2 auctions, so it wasn't all that exciting.
Would you have said that if we had 1 out of 1 of it?
I would.
You would.
I do want to talk about the fact that we had an auction in Rosamond Street, East St Kilda.
Phil, you did that one.
I did, Gary, and that was a weatherboard in need of major repair work and construction, which we thought would sell around the 600 mark, which we had a competitive auction, sold well into the mid-sixes, I think $651,000.
Yep,
what do you get, just out of interest, for $651,000 in Byron Bay?
That's a very good question. You get quite a simple 3-bedroom home. It probably doesn't have a second bathroom. We have the average price in our area is still held up pretty strongly in spite of the last 4 years. But that's what you get, a basic home, or you get a nice apartment.
And would you get a good rental return on something like that?
Yeah, and you'd get something there around $500, $550 a week.
And is most of the lettings in Byron Bay a kind of weekly, fortnightly thing where Swedish backpackers come in and take over the place?
There's not so much Swedish. There's been a movement to other countries.
Okay.
Russia, Lithuania, China, those areas. No, I'm joking. Half the houses in our town are holiday let, and the other half, in a rough sense, are owner-occupier or let just for normal tenants, you know, the working people and so on. But about half the dwellings probably in town have got some connection with holiday letting. The other half just...
Chris, I'd like to speak to you about a couple of things. Firstly, we spoke earlier, and you are talking to a lot of agents and mentoring and coaching and training a lot of agents. You talked a bit about the Melbourne real estate agents to me just before we started, and you said they were a little bit different from others, which made me feel very proud. And I'd just like to maybe have you share that view on GPTV.
Because I get to travel around a lot and I visit all the cities and train and coach in those cities, you get a pretty good feel after a few years. It's a good question. The differences between the cities. The best example I can give you to illustrate it, if a group in Melbourne has 100 salesmen and you have to do a training session, 95 of them will turn up for training. In the other cities it's a little different. I think the main reason or the main difference I see between the different cities is in Melbourne, real estate's viewed as a profession. A lot of people in other cities don't view it that way. I think you guys have been particularly good with your brands. I think your commitment to training down there is a lot better. And my experience down there is you're just as likely to get a private school educated young person sitting next to a working class person in your offices down there, both working really hard to become professional and doing really good training, whereas that doesn't seem to occur as much in the other cities. Now, they're big generalisations, but I guess my view is that Melbourne and Victoria view the act of being a professional real estate agent in a much more committed and professional way.
Yeah. The conference yesterday, we heard from the great Donald Trump. There he was on the screen, beaming down via satellite, beaming down, blessing all the agents, which was wonderful. And he talked about the three most important things in real estate. He talked about, firstly, passion. He talked about, secondly, momentum. And thirdly, he talked about focus. And I thought he was terrific, amongst other speakers. How did you find Mr. Donald Trump as a speaker?
I think the coolest thing was Donald letting us know halfway through that he'd snuck upstairs to a room at his friend's wedding and was doing the recording and did a little wave to us. Yeah. I think that was pretty good. The three things he mentioned, you couldn't encapsulate in any industry what it needs to be successful, and those three things. I think I've never met a really good successful agent who isn't passionate. I've never met an agent. Momentum is incredibly important. What was the third one?
The third one was focus.
Yeah.
Yeah, focus.
You focus all the time. Yeah, focus. Yeah. I'll focus. But he was great, Donald. It was really good listening to him, so he was wonderful.
Well, speaking of momentum, we do have to get back to the lecture theatre to hear some more exciting speakers. Chris, it's been great having you on. In fact, I think we might revisit GPTV, and perhaps you could sponsor GPTV coming to Byron Bay for perhaps a weekend.
Yeah, I've got to say thank you to
Come
GP.
for a week. Bring the team.
Why not?
It's been great having you on.
Yeah.
My name's Philip Kingston. Thanks for watching another week of GPTV.
From the pool at Jupiter's Casino, we thank you, Chris Handley,
Thank you.
and we see you next week on GPTV. All the best. See you. Cheers.